Can Ukraine survive without U.S. military support?
Probably it will be very, very, very difficult.
That was Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky shortly after meeting with J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio at the Munich Security Conference. Zelensky told NBC's Kristen Welker that Russian President Vladimir Putin wants to come to the negotiating table not to end the war, but to get a ceasefire deal that would lift certain international sanctions on Russia and would allow its military to regroup. Joining us now is former State Department senior advisor Nayyera Haq. Well, what do you think about that?
Yeah.
I mean, this is just, it's not unexpected, given how Trump was in his first term and everything he said in the campaign, but it's just this idea of America being alone and America abandoning allies is a good thing. I don't know. I don't know of anybody who is better off emotionally in the world because they have no friends and they sit at home taking, tinkering with their own toys.
Right. I think America alone is a necessary reframe of America first, to say there is a reason we have allies. There's a reason we show up for our allies, both because we care about democratic order worldwide, which question mark of whether or not this administration cares about democratic order, but also because it is necessary in order to keep us safe.
That is the lesson we learned from 9/11. Literally, when we were attacked and that we saw the two towers fall, and we realized that these were actors who were based overseas. NATO came to our rescue. It's the only time that Article 5 has been invoked, and NATO, as our allies, went in to help take out al-Qaeda in Afghanistan.
I'm sorry, the only time Article 5 has been invoked, who was it for?
The United States of America. This idea that we need to handle these challenges where they begin, which is largely overseas, rather than wait for them to come hit us at home, happens because we have alliances like NATO. Secondly, if you actually listen to Putin, this idea that Putin's America's friend is completely false. When he announced his invasion of Ukraine, he said it was because there's a false narrative about who won the Cold War. Like, Ronald Reagan would be rolling over in his grave right now, hearing what Donald Trump and other Republicans are doing. Putin thinks that the United States talks about having won the Cold War and has now taken over the world order, so that needs to be checked. So that's a signal that Putin's not going to stop with Ukraine.
And the Republicans who were standing with Ronald Reagan at that time also understood the importance of the role of the United States. And this was, again, before 9/11, which, again, to both of your points, crystallized the reality for the U.S. when we got attacked. We needed help. Who do we call? Right? We called a whole lot of friends around the globe who came to our aid. But now you have the current Republican vice president of the United States standing before our allies in Munich, lecturing them with this. Do we have?
Fundamentally, the goal is, as President Trump outlined it, we want the war to come to a close. We want the killing to stop, but we want to achieve a durable, lasting peace, not the kind of peace that's going to have Eastern Europe in conflict just a couple years down the road.
So the problem with that is everything that they're proposing and everything they're supporting will end in something other than peace, a lasting peace down the road. What is it that folks across the country need to understand about the foreign policy of the U.S. right now? I mean, because, we do a lot of this talk inside the Beltway, sometimes, and we kind of wind up talking to each other, and the rest of America, to Angelo's point in the last segment, kind of goes on to their little, pocket corner and get their information. I think for us, at this table, we want the American people to understand what's being said and what it really means for them. So when they hear the vice president speak this way, and there's another sound that we can use too that sort of crystallizes that moment, what should people understand it means for them potentially down the road?
Not only is it isolation, but it's going to actually hurt you in your pocketbook at home. When it comes to the United States, now looking like it only cares about itself, which, listen, I get it, feeling that we're overextended. I remember when I was growing up, this idea of we should not be the policemen of the world. I get that part. But working alongside people, helping people with common values, helps American values continue. So what we're really seeing is an entire reframing by J.D. Vance and Trump of what America actually stands for. right? This idea that an America that stands up for democratic values, an America that stands up for pluralism, and it's now turning to an America that stands up for colonialism, right? Land grabs, real estate deals. None of that benefits somebody sitting at home right now. That only benefits the people who are making the real estate deals.
Right. I want to take a listen to the other sound we have of J.D. Vance talking about the threat from within, and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
The threat that I worry the most about vis-a-vis Europe is not Russia, it's not China, it's not any other external actor. And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values, values shared with the United States of America.
One of the things that strikes me about the first piece of sound we played and then that piece of sound is that it sounds innocuous enough if you do not dig into the details and if you're not looking at it. Which values which shared values are we talking about? So let me pull up this from the Washington Post, which was that Vance met with the leader of a far-right German party, exported the MAGA message. When they say shared values, which values, pray tell?
I wish I was exaggerating when I say Nazi values. Right? I mean, this is the far right party in Germany, which understands what this kind of extremism can lead to. They are not in power right now. And for J.D. Vance to say the will of the people, apparently the will of the people is great when Trump wins in the United States. But he refused to meet with the elected leader of Germany, the German chancellor, and instead goes and meets with this far-right extremist party out of power, saying they're the will of the people. So what he's really presenting for the United States internally and overseas is that the will of the people is white, Christian, male, and willing to fight for that identity.
We'd let
It's
that
not
one.
subtle.
You
right?
just
That
it's
one sit for a
not
little bit,
subtle at
'cause
all.
it's not subtle.
And there's a parallelism between what is happening in Israel and Gaza and what is happening
Yes.
in Ukraine, in the sense that it is one thing to deal with the immediate crisis before us, and it is another thing to actually build an understanding, an infrastructure that guarantees, the understanding there is no guarantee, that we're not back here in 3 to 4 years.
It's called diplomacy, I thought.
Well, it's supposed to be diplomacy, and diplomacy what they used to call the international world order post-World War II. And that is part of what Putin and now Trump are in alliance against all of that. They don't want rules that actually impact all people. We've even had the Secretary of Defense, Hegseth, talk about how, those rules about war crimes, that limits Americans' opportunities to do what they need to do. I'm like, I didn't know we needed to commit war crimes to meet any of our objectives, but okay. Right? They don't want those rules. They want what they decide for themselves is better, and that is a new alliance. That is a new alliance now of the United States and Russia, possibly even some China on the side, but certainly not Europe.
Can I just say this point about Putin and Trump being aligned? When Donald Trump talks about taking Greenland, when he talks about taking Canada, Canada becoming the 51st state, that to me sounds like Vladimir Putin saying he wants Crimea and the parts of Ukraine. Right. This is trampling on what the people will call territorial integrity, but like not respecting the sovereignty of people's borders is something that dictators do. It's something that authoritarians do. It's not something I thought that Americans and American presidents and people who believe in democracy do. But that's why it's not a joke when he talks about Canada being the 51st state. It's actually a threat, a huge threat.
And it's laying the groundwork for this idea that America itself now will become a new imperial country, and that people want that.
I just saw gladiators like Rome back in the day.
You're a hawk. Thank you so much for being at the table with us.